G'day guys, we finally have the index for World Eaters in our hands, so let's have a look at what these blood-soaked maniacs can do in 10th edition Warhammer 40k.
Look for the Blood God.
Alright, now let's talk about a long time favorite of mine, and that is the Maulerfiend. This guy has been bad pretty much ever since he first came out. This model has never been particularly competitively viable. However, I reckon 10th edition is going to see that change. So he's got a 10-inch movement characteristic, which is the first thing that's interesting. You can bump that up to 12 inches with your Blessings of Khorne. Then you can advance and charge with this guy, which means you're going to be able to go, cool, he's now moving 18 inches, turn 1. Then on top of that, if Angron happens to be nearby, he can then do a 2d6 charge with +1 to that charge roll. He's going to be flying across the table faster than ever before. And also, if he happens to declare that charge against an enemy unit that is below its starting strength, he's going to get a further +2 to that charge roll. So this is where comboing him with something that provides damage from range is going to be really interesting. Because you can basically go, cool, where's my target? Who do I want that Maulerfiend to get into? Fire a las cannon into it, you know, from your Hellbrute or from your ectoplasma cannons from your Forge Fiend or whatever. Fire something into it, do some wounds to it, and now it's bleeding. The Maulerfiend can hunt that down, and you're going to be just sending this guy across the table at absolutely crazy speeds. Now, it is worth noting that he does still have to move around terrain, and he does have a relatively big base, which is going to make this difficult. And it's also worth noting that because of his big base, it's relatively easy for your opponent to screen him out and prevent you from, moving into where you want to move. So it's not necessarily that powerful if your opponent is planning around it and is able to block you. However, it's something that your opponent has to respect, your opponent has to plan around it, and your opponent has to block it. And anytime you can force your opponent to do things and make those decisions is every time that you give them an opportunity to do it wrong. If you do that and you basically create all these probabilities where it's like, okay, if you're so focused on making sure that you block out that Maulerfiend, it's entirely possible that you're going to forget that this unit of 8-bound can now slide through that gap that you left and do a similar thing with their scout move and their pregame and all that sort of stuff. So being able to go, cool, I've got a Maulerfiend on this side of the table, I've got maybe a Lord Invocatus with some Exalted 8-bound on this side. Where do you want to block? Can you block at all? How do you know? So being able to do those sorts of things is going to be really, really interesting. And I think the Maulerfiend now is just going to be coming out like a bat out of hell. He also does serious damage when he gets into melee as well. So being able to get buffs like reroll wounds from 8-bound nearby, or being able to get things like +1 to wound from stratagem support means that this guy's going to be bringing things down very easily, and he has a very high number of attacks as well. So he's a really good solution to your opponent's hard targets. He's a really good solution to big hordes of units. He's fast, he does a lot of damage, he's really, really cool, and he's also pretty tough compared to previous versions of him. So I'm a huge fan of the Maulerfiend in 10th edition, but let me know what you guys think. Do you think this is finally the edition that we're going to see the Maulerfiend on the table? Do you think that Alpha Strike potential with the 10-inch move, the +2 from the Blessings of Khorne, the +6 from your auto advance stratagem, then the +2 from being able to charge something that's taken damage, the +1 from Angron being nearby, and then your 2d6 charge on top of that, do you think that that's a significant enough threat range to really keep your opponent honest and force them to make those sorts of decisions? Or do you think people are going to be like, lol, Maulerfiend, that's cute, and not really care? I'd love to know what you guys think. Obviously, still very early in the edition, so figuring out what the general consensus is going to be a really important part of what this channel is aiming to do. So let's have a conversation in the comments below.
Look for the Blood God.
the community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. Suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.